Can you guys hear me? Awesome, awesome. Hi, good bonjour. Let's see if you practice your Creole you learned this morning. Bonjour, bonjour. Okay, honneur. Ah, okay. Then I have Haitians in the house. So we're gonna start off because I'm here. I'm a psychologist, professor at University of Miami. I don't know if UM would like Miami. University of Miami, where I head a department at the University of Miami there. So you've been sitting for a little while. We're gonna stand up for a minute. Stand up for a minute and stretch for a minute. Stretch those legs, right? First for a second, because you've been sitting for a while. Right? Stretch them out. Walk. Yes, yes, yes. After all of that, what we've been hearing, the stress of copywriting and all of that associated with it. So, really, yes, take a moment, right? So, it's interesting because I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been a psychologist. You can sit down whenever you're ready, Because, you know how like we have watches now? I have a watch now that tells me when to stand up. You know, it's like says, okay, time to stand up. And then I have one, I was at a meeting yesterday at University of Miami. I'm sitting in a meeting, it says breathe. I was like, okay, that's like really where we're at right now, that we need something to tell me. And I realized I was really tense at this meeting. I was like ready to kill somebody. And then my watch says breathe. I was like, okay, yes, girl, breathe, right? Really, really important. So interestingly enough, right, thank you, Jean-Marie, for the invitation to come and be a part of this amazing conference. And so when he asked me, I was like, Jean-Marie, I don't do tech. I can barely figure out how to turn on my phone. You know, and I love music, right? But he says, you are perfect to come in because psychology is a central part of what we do, right? And everything that I have done as a psychologist for the last 30 years is to integrate lots of healing pathways, right? There's a way that whenever I say I'm a psychologist, people assume that it looks like Sigmund Freud. Right, that there's a couch somewhere and somebody comes and that's the first thing somebody says to me is like, how are you going to analyze me? And I was like, I don't do that, right? Like we haven't really done that kind of work really the same way that Sigmund Freud has done it. And so we've really been looking at, particularly for me as a Haitian psychologist, to look at how are we thinking about healing in the way that we should be thinking about it as it pertains to all types of people, right? And that healing doesn't only happen by talking to somebody, but it happens significantly to our music, to our dance, to the song. Now, how many of you here, like if you're feeling some kind of way, you have a playlist? Raise your hand if you have a playlist. Like if you're like, I'm going to go walking, I have a playlist, right? I'm feeling a little, down, I have a playlist. I feel like I'm going to be like warrior today. I have a playlist. I'm like going on battle today. I have a playlist I put in, right? That you have a playlist for rush hour traffic. You have one for coming in the morning, one for going out in the evening, right? But if you want a little like, get your feet going, you have your different kind of playlist, right? All of us are like have playlists because they are significant, and we really want to make sure that everybody is using music and understand that music is a vehicle towards healing. Dance is a vehicle towards healing. So the work that I am doing as a psychologist is the integration of all of those elements into our space, right? So that people don't think of, oh, I go see a psychologist because I'm sick. By the time if you're feeling sick and you come in to see me, it's too late, right? We want to make sure that you know exactly what to do as we're talking about all of these things. I mean, like every time I see my lawyer, I get stressed, right? And so, like, how do you work through that, right? How do you work through that stress? So I want to talk a little bit about one concept today, which is this concept of resiliency. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about how do we practice that, because in order for us to be in this industry, in order for us to be able to do this work that we are doing, you have to build a level of oomph. Now, some of us can call it resiliency. We can call it whatever we're going to need to call it. But you know that every single day that you are just grinding, and we need to be able to develop some mechanism to know how am I really focusing on, and adjusting to all of that. So I want to talk a little bit about that. What do I mean by that? Because I don't have time to talk about all aspects of well-being, and talk a little bit about like what are some of the clinical ways that you can actually build that, because it's an ongoing process, right, that you are doing, and I promise to get out of here, right? So let's talk a little bit about the term resiliency and what do I mean by that. It's actually a term that I actually don't like, right? But it's a very common term that we use a lot in the field. How many people have heard the term resiliency? You've heard somebody say it. Like, we use it a lot as a potential, like, marginalized people. We're like, oh, they're so resilient, right? And we hear about Haitians. We're like, oh, they're so resilient. They're such resilient people. Now, you might say, why is it that I don't like the term? I don't like the term because resiliency is focusing on the person who's overcome some things. So we look at this person and we're like, look where they've come. And look how far they've made it, and that person is defined as a resilient person. So if you've gone through this industry, whether or not you're in tech or you're in music, and you've gone through some things and you made it through, people say you're resilient, right? But nobody pays attention to the things that you had to go through to actually earn you that title, resilient, to begin with. And I want to do something about the systemic challenges that actually makes people resilient, as opposed to the fact that we're just going to keep having resilient people because we live in difficult situations, right? And so how do we work through the difficult situations so that not only that we can have less resilient people, but so that we can really ensure that everybody's thriving, right? The other reason why I'm not crazy about the term, even though I'm using it today, is because what happened, there's a way that we think of, like, the resilient person as the one that comes out like glossy. You know, it's like you've gone through the ghetto, you've gone through these challenges, and then look at the person, they're now a lawyer, a doctor, a this, and we're like, that's a resilient person. But there's another person who was my classmate, who didn't become a doctor so-and-so, who's also resilient, right? Because they too made it. They may not be the next lawyer, they may not be the next, doctor, but they too are very resilient people. And so how do we ensure that we go beyond that? So we are talking about the term resilience. We're talking about a term that means your ability to overcome difficult situations. How many of us know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about, if you've gone through some difficult time and you made it through. Right? And so you already would fall into that category, so we can put that in. If you didn't raise your hand after what we just went through with COVID, right? Like right now I said to everybody, if I meet somebody in this particular moment in time, in the humanity space that we are living in, what's happening in a global way, and I meet somebody in this, I say, how are you? And they say, I'm good. I know you lying. Right? Because we're not all good at this particular moment, right? But there's a way that we show up and somebody say, how are you? Right? Like the answer that we typically give is, I'm good. Smiling to her. I'm good. Are you good? No. Right? So imagine for a moment if you could practice and you said to somebody, and she asked me, she's like, how are you, Guerda, this morning? And I said, not really good. Is she ready to deal with that? So we tend to answer the question simply because of that, and we show up as if we are okay, but not necessarily, right? And so really, really is important. So we're talking about enduring the problems, right? And and emerging stronger as a result of that as well is all a part of that. So it is sort of like this thing. We call it in Creole, we say fait. We don't have a word for resiliency in Haitian Creole. So if you show up and you say, moun sa yo resilient, that's un mot anglais, right? It's an English word that we just made a Creole word, right? When we say, madame sa comment fait, F-E, right? That is the true word in our Haitian Creole language to mean that, this person is strong enough to be able to deal with some things. Okay, I know she's looking at me. She's like, okay, you have to get out of here. Okay, so I'm talking a little bit about what are the things that you have to go through in order for you to get to this end page that talks about, like, now you're a resilient person. In order for you to be defined as, for you to be claim this label that says you are a resilient person, it means that you're dealing with a number of stressors. And as you go through these stressors, then you are now can be defined as resilient. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the job pressures that are there, which all of us know what those are, family issues, right, overall. I was talking to a man a couple of years ago, and he shows up. He's a very professional, very accomplished businessman. And he goes to work every single day, and he comes home, he looks okay, and then he gets to his house, and he takes out his work clothes, put on his workout outfit, and then go walking. That's why his wife knows and kids. He's just going to go for a walk before the day. But he takes this walk and finds himself a spot where he bawls his eyes out. And when I ask him whether or not, like, how much of that does your wife know, the person who's sleeping right next to you? He said, none of it. They can't handle the idea that I could show up and I could cry like this. But this is what he does on a regular basis. So the pressure is real, and the family issues are real. The family pressures are really real, right? So let me tell you a quick story. I'm coming home from University of Miami. The kids at the time were young kids at the time. They're sitting outside, and then I passed by my house, and I kept driving. And then I went around again. I passed by the house, and then I kept driving. And I did that again another time, right? When I finally pull in the driveway, and then I say hi to the kids. And my oldest, Tatiana, says, oh, my God, Mom, we're really worried about you. I said, why? She said, Mom, you don't know where you live. Yet you pass our house 3 times. Like, you really, like, what's going on? Like, what is wrong with you? And part of the reason for passing out the house 3 times is because I wasn't ready to go home yet. Because as soon as I open the door, my kids don't care about Dr. NIcolas. They don't care about my title at the University of Miami. What they want is their mom. And I have to be ready to deal with the mom issues, the family issues. Whatever happened at school, whatever was going on for them, be able to really deal with those. So we're talking about the family issues that also is linked to the stresses that we're talking about. And then there are the financial concerns. And boy, we know that here in Miami, right? So everything is increasing ridiculously. I went to go buy eggs the other day. I don't know how many of you have seen. I remember when my thing of eggs, 12, was less than $1. And my organic cage-free eggs said $9 and something cents, right? So we know the financial concerns are real, right? The health problems, we've seen them both in terms of COVID and so on, is major. And of course, there are all the micro stressors that we're talking about, all the things that that we don't really talk a lot about as well is happening. So what is the impact of all of that? What is the impact of all of those stresses? Because stress is really one of those things that we actually don't give credit to. Like, we really do not give it the respect that it needs. But it can have significant impact in our lives if we don't find a way to gérer stress, right? To manage this particular stress. What are we talking about? So we're talking about chronic stress are the things that you're dealing with every single day, right? So every single day. So this morning I'm trying to get here from this conference from Pinecrest, where I am. I'm at the University of Miami. I'm coming here from South Miami to come here. And then the rain is happening. And you know, once that happened in Miami, it's over. It's over. Right? You can just plan now for 2 hours, right? But now you're sitting there, and I'm sitting in that traffic, and I'm bothered because I want to be on time, right, for the thing. I'm ready to be on time for this and ready to go. And as I'm sitting there, like, annoyed and aggravated, I said, I'm doing this once this week. Somebody does it Monday to Friday, every single week. They do it in the morning, and then they do it in the evening. Imagine what that looks like as you are battling the Miami traffic, and it has gotten worse. Anybody join me? It has gotten worse, right, in Miami in terms of the traffic. And so think about that for a moment. If you're dealing with that every single day, and then you get home and somebody wants to know. Think about that. You just dealt with 2 hours of traffic, and I get home, somebody wants, baby, what are we doing for dinner? Baby, what are we doing for dinner? Like I'm not even there yet. Right, in terms of that. But it's like this everyday stress that really is important. What's the impact of that? It turns out that this particular types of stress that we're talking about, this chronic stress that is ongoing, that is happening here all the time, increase your anxiety. And you don't need me to tell you that, right, to see the increase of your anxiety, because all you have to do is sit in the traffic to see, like, as you're dealing with these things over and over again, without a doubt, it's going to increase your anxiety. It's going to increase your depression. And here's the kicker. All of that has a huge impact on your overall immune system. And once your immune system is weak, then you know the damage that can happen. Now you're susceptible to all kinds of issues and all kinds of challenges, right, overall. So how do you manage all of that? So, right? And so we are using this resilience piece as a rhythm. It's like music, right? To kind of think of it as something that is ongoing. It's like, how do I establish a mechanism and a process that feels like as if I'm just playing a thing of music? Right? That's going to allow me the opportunity to be able to know how am I managing and dealing with all of that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do that's going to like building your own rhythm, right? And so I can't sing. I can only sing really well in my head. And in my head, people, I sound like Whitney Houston. Okay, you with me, right? Are you with me? And so every time I'm singing and I have my rhythm and I'm moving and it sounds like I'm like to me, like Whitney and I are one. And my kid says, Mom, please. Mama, please, you don't even know the words. Like, it's not, There are words to the song, Mom. Like, but in my head, there were words, right? In the way that we have. And so you can have your own rhythm. You can move to your own beat. It's like, how am I creating a process and a mechanism that's just like my rhythm for the week, right? That I can absolutely be able to work through. So what does that look like? And so how many of you here practice meditation? Right? Really, really, really important. What do you do for meditation? Yeah. Yeah, right? So sometimes people think of meditation that I have to go somewhere. I have to go to a class and meditate. You can literally sit with yourself, right, and stay focused, right? And when you're gardening is meditating, right? When you're walking could be meditating. You cooking could be meditating. You praying could be meditating. There's lots of different ways to be able to meditate without you having to feel like somehow I'm going to go in a corner and I need to like hum some songs, right? Because that's the image sometimes we have in our mind in terms of that. So if you've ever actually have had any cooking or gardening, you can see how important that is, right? In terms of meditation. The other thing I'll say very quickly, and you can practice it, right? It's really helpful that I do it. I recommend it to everybody as well. Is when you get up in the morning, you can do it anytime. If you're trying to like see, how do I get centered? As you said, how do I get centered and focused for a moment in a space of chaos that I'm in? How do I do that? Count from 100 backward. Count from 100 backward without the distraction. And the moment your mind goes into, oh, I need eggs. Did I sign this piece of paper? You lose your count. You have to restart again. 100, 99, 98, 97, 96. You have to do it, but you can't do it by speaking. It's a mental exercise. So you have to sit right there. So as you get up in the morning, before you get your phone, you're going to say, I'm going to practice. How do I stay focused? And I'm going to count backward from 100 to 1, right? As a process to do that. The other piece is regular exercise. How many of you do that? Right? So anytime I said regular exercise, I do it, like every day I have to be out walking, every single day. Even if it's for 30 minutes, I'm out there walking, right? I'm a marathoner now. So next time I'm invited for this conference, it's going to say Dr. Nicolas, marathoner. I'm going to add all those titles, right, to it, because I just started that. I'm talking about a thing that forces you to focus on self. It's amazing, right, what does marathoning does. But regular exercise is key. But here's the thing. People think that what I mean by regular exercise, it means like I have to put on some sports outfit on, and then I have to get outside and do all of that. I was like, no, put your compa music on. Put your salsa on. Put your merengue on, right? All of that is regular exercise. As long as the body is moving, it's exercising. Right? And so you can absolutely practice that every single day by just saying, I'm going to start chopping some vegetables. I'm going to put on a little tabu combo. And I'm going to be like, hey, carrot cutting. Hey. Like all of that is exercising, right, as a part of it. The other piece is about making sure that you have a balanced diet. Again, because we're so stressed, we're just eating whatever. Right? And we certainly saw that with COVID. Whatever I can quickly Uber eat. Worst thing that could have happened in my life, in my house. Uber Eats something relatively quickly, right, is what we're in. So it doesn't allow us to ensure that we're having a balanced diet. And then lastly is adequate sleep, right? So what do I mean by adequate sleep? Because all of us have very different sleep levels, right, that we need. Some of us need 10 hours. I meet with somebody, they're like, if I don't have 10 hours of sleep, I'm not functioning. And then other people need 6 hours, 7 hours. What's really clear about whatever your rhythm is for you, it needs to be consistent. So if it's 6 hours, it's 6 hours consistently. You can't have 4 one day and then 5 another day, right? Because that's not consistent in terms of adequate level of sleep that you need, okay? Okay, so what are we saying overall in terms of all of that, right? So managing your stress, right, this process of building this resiliency is about consistent in your practice. Everything is about consistency, right? So it turns out that in our field, in psychology, in order for you to change your behavior, all of us here have bad behaviors. I have plenty of those, right? You have plenty, you have some too, right? We have bad behaviors. Turns out that in order for you to get rid of one bad behavior, you have to do something 21 days straight in order for you to get rid of it. Are you following? So let's say you're like, I want to start walking, right? And that's what I'm going to put in my schedule is to start walking because I'm not walking enough, right? But you need to walk 21 days straight in order for it to become a habit that you get bothered when you don't do it. So if you only do it for 20 days and you're like, but I've done 20 days, and then you miss a day, guess what you have to do? Start all over again, right? So that consistency is really, really key. The other thing to keep in mind in terms of this consistency is that, which is important in terms of why the meditation is important, because every single time you have a negative thought, like you say to yourself, I don't think I can do this. That's a negative thought, right? I don't think, I don't think this deal is going to go through. Negative thought. Every time you have one negative thought, you need 7 positive ones to get rid of that one negative thought. Are you following me? So every time you have one negative thought, you need 7 positive ones. So this is why you need to start practicing the positive thoughts, because I don't know how many is in your bag to pull if you have 7 positive ones for every negative ones you have, right? So consistency is key, right? Making sure that you can handle the variability, and that's usually the thing that destabilizes us, right? And so I had planned on doing X, but then something else happens, and I don't know how to handle it. Like I didn't have plan A, B, C, D, E, or F, right? And so as I'm coming here, I have my beautiful slides. See how pretty they are? I worked on them and getting them ready for you guys, just for you, for the purpose of this conference. And then I get here. If those guys cannot get it up, what do I need to do? Am I going to panic and say I got to go home? I better have a plan B, right, to deal with that, because I have to be able to handle that variability. And because I develop a plan B, C, and D to manage that, I'm not stressed. I'm not bothered by what is going to happen. I'm not going to be overwhelmed if those guys can't get it together in the back in terms of the visual, right? Because I already have a plan on how to handle that. And all of that, the ability for you to also be able to bounce back, right? This is like back in the 80s, like that whole, shirt that says, things happen, but it didn't say thing happen. It said shit happens, right? That's what the shirt is. And all of us were wearing our shit happen t-shirts, right, in the 80s, because it's ability to be able to say, okay, that was terrible. Awful things happen to really good people, but how do I move on? I cannot allow myself to sit there and just because this was a complete failure and that is how I'm going to go about my day. One incident, can I move from it? Can I learn from it? Can I analyze from it? And that's the big thing, is that the ability for you to be able to pay attention and learn from all of that is really is important. So let me just say thank you so much to all of you. Let me go back. Let me go back for a minute. Okay, that was my slides for you. What are you getting out of this? Raise your hand. One thing you're getting out. Be consistent, okay? One more. Huh? You can bounce back, yeah? Reversing your negative thoughts, yeah? Resiliency ain't just good because it doesn't allow you to work on the system, right? You have to be able to work on the system that gets you to be resilient as well, right? So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your time.